The staff's going to record me too, just so they know. I appreciate your joining me. I just want to report on some fact-finding that I've been doing over the last 24 hours. I just came from a meeting, as you know, with Mayor Dion. I met earlier today with Mayor Fountain in Biddeford, and I've been in touch by phone several times, not today, but several times with Mayor Carla Shalin in Lewiston. My questions are, what is ICE doing? What is their mission? How many people are here? And what is actually transpiring on the ground? The piece of paper I took out is a press release from the department, from DHS, which you all have probably seen, that talks about what's going on in Maine. What bothers me about what's going on and what I'm trying to determine, and by the way, I've also reached out to ICE. It turns out in order to interact with them, we have to go through the Washington office, and I haven't gotten a response yet. But what bothers me about that is that this entire operation is based on the premise, and I'll read it from their press release, an immigration enforcement effort across the state of Maine targeting the worst of the worst criminal illegal aliens. That's the mission, the worst of the worst criminal illegal aliens. Well, as evidence of what they're doing here in Maine, yesterday they released pictures of 4 people that had been arrested. 2 have been convicted. 1 is charged with, but apparently not convicted, and 1 was convicted of operating under the influence. They also told us on Monday they've arrested 50 people. One of my questions is, who are the other 46? These are 4 that they've given us. One of them is an OUI, which I think few people would characterize as the worst of the worst. But what are the other, who are the other 46 that they arrested this week? And what were they either charged with or convicted of that constitutes the worst of the worst? I also met just now with the superintendent of schools. And I'm hearing both directly from people in the community and also from the superintendent about the soft damage that's being done by this. In other words, the damage to children whose parent may disappear. The other question, of course, is where are these people going? Where are they being held? And under what circumstances? But the damage to children, to families, the breadwinner who's being taken away, what's going to happen to that family? Are we going to see a surge in evictions in a month or so because of this? And again, to read from this ICE press release, under President Trump and Secretary Noem, we are no longer allowing criminal illegal aliens to terrorize American citizens. What I have been hearing is there is terrorizing of American citizens going on, but it's by ICE, not by the people that they are arresting who are allegedly the worst of the worst. The level of anxiety in this community and in Lewiston and Biddeford is rising. We're not anywhere near what's been going on in Minneapolis. We hope that doesn't occur here. But I think ICE owes us some information. They've said that there are 1,400 targets in Maine. We'd like to know the nature of those targets. What crimes are they charged with? Have they been convicted? Or have they only been arrested and not convicted? The other thing that has concerned me, and this hasn't yet occurred in Maine as far as we know, is that we've recently learned that ICE has been operating under an internal memo from last May that essentially allows ICE agents to enter a home without a warrant. It's the first time in my experience a memo is held to overcome the United States Constitution. The Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution is very clear that the people shall be secure in their papers and houses, and it can only be violated with a judicial warrant under certain very specific circumstances. And it's very important that the Fourth Amendment uses the word people. It doesn't use the word citizen. The framers knew how to use the word citizen. I looked that up. For example, to be President of the United States, you have to be a natural-born citizen. That's in Article 1 of Article 2 of the Constitution. So the point is, there's a difference between people or persons and citizen. Everyone in the United States is entitled to due process. No person's life, liberty, or property can be denied without due process of law. That's the other concern that I have is, what is the due process here? What evidence is being presented in terms of, and to what body, to what judicial body is being presented before an arrest warrant can be issued or a invasion of a home? I am not in any way justifying people who are here illegally, especially those who have committed serious crimes. On the other hand, it's not necessarily that we are against enforcing our immigration laws, it's the manner in which it's going forward. And I have never in my experience seen law enforcement agencies with masks on, without body cams, often without identification. And I guess the point that struck me this morning after talking to the mayor in Biddeford and thinking about this is, what is the damage being done in order to protect us from damage seems to be greater. I can't think of a better way to say that. In other words, I guess the other way to say it is the cure is worse than the disease. And that's what's happening here in Maine, and it's going to be happening in other places across the country. Now, the one thing I do want to say for sure is that those of us who are concerned about this, and there are many throughout our communities, I'm hearing from them every single day, have to keep cool and have to be restrained and not give any justification for further force being brought into our community. I think the best role right now for people is as observers. And if ICE is following the law and pursuing people that should be removed, then that's okay. But if they are not, we need to be sure that we have a record of that, and that's one of the things that citizens can do. So those are my thoughts today. At this point, my intention is to keep in touch with Mayor Dion, Mayor Shalim, and Mayor LaFountain and other public officials in this region just to monitor what's going on. It would be very helpful if ICE would be more clear, as I said at the beginning, what their mission is and how they're pursuing that mission. For example, are they being given the names of people who have applied for work permits? And is that, is someone who, yes, may be here on an overstayed visa or otherwise not fully legal, but is in the process of legalization, or is in the process of refugee status, or is in the process of asylum status, all of which are entirely legal, and in the process is also trying to get a work permit, should that be used to capture someone and detain them in places that we are not, of which we know not? So this is something that we need to, I think we need to have some oversight. And that's one of my jobs as a United States Senator, is to provide oversight to the executive agencies as to how they're operating. And that's certainly what we intend to do. Next week will be debates about the budget. It turns out the DHS budget is on the docket for next week in Washington. And I know that there are discussions going on right now and negotiations about what is going to be in that bill and how it will either facilitate or restrain the activities of ICE. Again, enforcing immigration law is fine. That's what law enforcement is all about. How it's being done, however, with the damage that's being done to our community, is what's of concern to me. And I'm tired of hearing people saying the worst of the worst when one of the people they told us was an OUI. That's not the worst of the worst. OUI is a serious offense, but that's not what these folks are talking about when they say the worst of the worst. And so let's call this what it is. This is a large-scale mass deportation effort, And let's drop the pretense that somehow this is about the worst of the worst. If they are, tell us. They arrested 50 people on Monday. They gave us the names of 4. Who are the others? Where are they? And what did they do to trigger this activity? So that's the comment for now. Yes, sir, Old Navy. I saw you last night.
Yeah.
I watched the mayor's conference last night.
Great, yeah. My name is Robert from the Associated Press. Can you tell us what you've heard is happening on the ground? How aggressive are they? What kind of tactics are they using? And also, can you also expound on your statement? The damage being done is worse than the cure. For people who are outside Maine, what have you seen? What have you heard?
We have not seen, at least as what I'm hearing, the kind of aggressive activity that we've seen so many of us in Minneapolis. What's happening is people kind of putting themselves under self-imposed house arrest. Children staying home from school. The superintendent testified last night at the public meeting that about attendance is down about 5%. I think now it's a little more than that, and in some schools it's over 15%. Kids are staying home from school. Parents are afraid to take their kids to school. They're afraid to put them on the bus. Those are the kinds of things, that's the kind of hurt that I'm talking about. People are afraid to go to work. And we're going to see that reflected when they can't pay their mortgage or they can't put food on the table. And I'm hearing from employers who are having a fairly high level of absenteeism because people that are in a gray zone are afraid to go out in public. So that's the kind of thing that happened. I haven't seen or had reports of the kind of direct confrontation and violence that we've seen in so often in Minneapolis, and I hope we don't see that here. But that doesn't mean that it's not affecting our community in negative ways.
Senator,
Sir.
Josh Iger from MS Now.
From?
MS Now.
Yes.
You mentioned oversight, and I was actually going to ask you about that. As a sitting member of the United States Senate, you described that you or your office has been unable to get them on the phone.
Right.
I understand there's a budget hearing next week, and you guys provide it that way. But I guess I'm wondering how this is possible that no one has been able to get even the basic answers about what is happening on the congressional level.
Well, part of the issue, in order to schedule an oversight hearing, the chairman of the committee has to agree. And thus far, the chairs of the committees, there have been some hearings, but not, I don't believe, sufficient. I think, I'm not wrapping myself in a cloak here, but I think a United States Senator asking for what's going on in his state is a reasonable request that should be honored by the federal agency. That's I'm on the board of directors, if you will. I don't understand why it should be so difficult. Congress is notoriously cumbersome and slow, but I believe people are ready to address this issue. And as I say, I'm not on the Appropriations Committee, but my understanding is that there's some pretty heavy negotiations about the DHS bill that will put some restraint and some additional conditions on the activities of ICE. One of the further complicating factors is that there was a huge funding of ICE in the big, beautiful bill last summer. So it's not clear, if we don't pass the budget next week, they still may have the money to operate, you see, because of this sort of big fund that was created I think it was over $100 billion for ICE last year. So the question is, even if the budget is blocked for DHS, that may not have much of an effect. But I think, again, what bothers me, as you can tell, is this mantra of the worst of the worst. And they give us 4 names, one of which is an OUI, and the other 46 they haven't told us. So that tells me that there's a skunk here.
As it relates to that memo that is allowing ICE agents to go into people's homes without a warrant, My first question when I saw that was, is that constitutional? And what oversight does Congress have as it relates to that? Like, can
It's
Congress
blatantly
stop that?
unconstitutional.
So can Congress stop that from happening? And how so?
Again, we can and should call in the author of that memo and the secretary and say what gives. What possible legal justification is that? Now, I haven't seen the memo myself, like many of you. I've seen reports of the memo, and apparently it became public because of a whistleblower. It wasn't anywhere, not in the Federal Register, but it now appears, I haven't heard anything to dispute it. So assuming that it's valid, that the memo says what it does, it's blatantly unconstitutional, and the official who promulgated it should be called before Congress and answer some questions about it.
Senator, what would you say that Mainers who support the immigration enforcement action taking place?
As I said, I think it's not a question of whether there should be enforcement of our immigration laws, it's how it's done. And does it need to be done with necessary a show of force? There are ways to proceed. Any law enforcement officer, if you're going to arrest somebody, you don't need 10 people. You need 1 or 2. And you have a warrant, and you go through a judicial process. None of that's happening here. It's the way it's being done, not necessarily. I can't stand here as a public official and say we shouldn't enforce the law. But I can say that how it's being done in Maine and in other parts of the country, I don't believe squares with the Constitution and the laws of this country. And as the main point I want to make is it's counterproductive. If the purpose here is to stop allowing people to terrorize American citizens, they ought to look in the mirror.
Senator, realizing you haven't been properly briefed, you mentioned work permits a few minutes ago. Do you think what's informing this list of 1,400 people might be immigrants with work permits, or pending deportation orders, or outstanding criminal charges, all of the above, or what do you think?
I'm
You don't
concerned
have to
about all
watch it
those
come
things,
back
and that's
on or
my
anything,
point.
but just restart it.
Just
And I don't
restart,
expect
okay.
them to
Not
give
like
me a
shut
list by
down.
name
Yeah,
of those
yeah,
14
exactly.
people, because they worry that
Yeah, Jim didn't
somehow
really,
that
he was
list
kind of
will
like,
get out
that's
and
weird.
people
I
be
don't know why
forewarned.
Jane,
But I think they ought
Jane's
to
account
tell
was
us
acting like that, so
the nature.
we'll dig into it more tomorrow,
Number one,
probably.
how
but-
they made that list, and the nature of the people that are on it, not by personal identification, but, here's a person that was convicted of rape, here's a person that was convicted of murder, here's a person that all they did is apply for asylum. You see what I mean? I want to know where that list of 1,400 came from. And one of the problems here that's going on is the sharing, for example, of IRS data. Undocumented people in this country pay, the last number I saw was something like $96 billion in taxes. If the IRS is sharing that data, and those people who have been voluntarily paying their taxes are going to say, I better not pay my taxes anymore because the ICE is going to get the list from the IRS, and we've shot ourselves in the foot. And that's what worries me. If people are following the law, applying for asylum, applying for refugee status, applying for a green card, applying for work permits, and that itself is used as the list for deportation, then why should people follow those legal procedures?
Senator, you mentioned the questions that you have about who's being arrested, how many people, where are they going, et cetera. Who specifically are you asking those questions to, and what are you hearing in response?
Well, I've started with the mayor and the police chief, but the real people are ICE. And I was told, when I was coming here today, I said, let's see if we can, I'd like to meet with whoever's in charge of ICE in this area. And I was told, and again, I don't want to overstress this, but what I was told is that has to go through Washington, through, I don't know, congressional relations or some other office. And I may get back on Monday and they'll say, great, Senator, let's sit down and talk about this. So I don't want to be heard to say today they're stonewalling me. Not that hasn't happened yet, but I've made the request and hope to follow up. It shouldn't have been complicated, however. If a U.S. Senator says, I want to know what's going on in my state, somebody should say, here's what we're doing. And And it's bothersome that that wasn't the immediate response.
So they're citing the 50 arrests on the first day, 1,400 people that they're targeting. Have you been able to independently confirm those numbers? I've only seen that on Fox News.
No, I think that's what ICE themselves said. They said I think those numbers came from them, but I can't confirm. Did you have a question?
Yeah, the memo about the warrants, that seems to fly in the face of a lot of guidance that people here have been given about staying home, not answering the door, asking to see a warrant signed by a judge. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? And I mean, should the guidance change given the fact that this memo is out there?
Well, first I should say that I have not heard of any cases in Maine where that's been implemented, where people have tried to enter a residence without a warrant. So I'm speculating to some extent that they may try to do that. So I think advising people of their rights should still be the case. And that's, I think I'll leave it at that.
Senator, can I ask a brief off-topic Washington question?
Off topic. Are there other topics this week?
Our congressional team was wondering if you had any update on bipartisan healthcare legislation and/or.
I do, and I'm not going to tell you.
Senator, just to be clear.
I'm involved in those discussions,
Right,
and
which is why
I believe we're close to a bill, and hopefully we'll have a bill next week. Yeah.
Just to be clear, Senator, you're here in Maine, you're the senator from Maine, and you asked to see the commander in charge of this operation, Catch of the Day. And they told you, no, go back to Washington and maybe we'll give you a briefing there if there's an oversight hearing?
That's what I was told by my staff. I don't want to overdo this. I don't want to overstate it, because somebody may say, well, we were willing to talk to him, he just didn't call the right number. So I don't want that to be the lead of this story. But what I was told this morning, this meeting was set up in a hurry. This wasn't on the schedule until last night. I said, I want to see the mayor and the chief of police and the superintendent of schools in Portland, the mayor in Biddeford. And then I said, well, what about ICE? Let's see what they can tell us, who's in charge. And what I was told is that has to go through Washington. But again, I don't want to make this I don't want to make that a bigger deal than it is. It may be that we didn't ask the right person.
I mean, it's not like about
If
you or
somebody
your...
from ICE is watching and they want to call me tonight, let me know.
But, and it's not about you or your ego, but it's crazy that you and Governor Mills was just here a few hours ago. She's the chief executive of the state of Maine. And is it because she's a Democrat and you're not a Republican? Why do you think you can't get these answers from the Trump administration?
I'm not sure they want sunlight into what's going on. I don't know. You'll have to ask them. You should call ICE and say, what's the plan for Maine?
If you're not working for a certain network, they don't give us the answers either.
I see.
Oh, I messaged Sarah. I need to go.
Oh,
Yeah, sorry, I should have included you.
oh, I see the camera over there.
I guess my message would be respectful of Maine people and realize the collateral damage that may be occasioned by these activities, and therefore calibrate them as carefully and as narrowly as possible so as to not unduly harm families and children in our community.
Senator, you've indicated that the information that you and the rest of us are receiving from ICE is not necessarily the complete truth. Give us a gut check, if you would. What's your level of confidence that any answers that you do receive to your questions will be honest and complete?
I give everybody the benefit of the doubt. I suspect that we will get I can't imagine they would give us improper information. We have to go, the mayor said. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.